labor that she does every single time. And it's labor. It's not just some sort of random contraction. It's labor.
Welcome back to my channel. For years, the truth stayed buried beneath silence, deflection, and carefully crafted narratives. But now everything is beginning to crack, and at the center of it all is a question no one in the Brown family can escape anymore. Where did the money go? It started with whispers, subtle contradictions, stories that didn't quite line up. One person saying one thing, another insisting the opposite. And right in the middle of it all stood Janelle Brown, calm, composed, and, for a long time, quiet. But not anymore. Because according to Janelle, the story that's been told for years, the one where she was supposedly in charge of the family finances, isn't just misleading, it's completely false. She didn't control the money. She didn't make the decisions. And, perhaps most shocking of all, she didn't even know where large portions of it were going. That revelation alone was enough to shake fans. But what came next? That's what turned suspicion into something far more serious. After years of watching money flow into a shared family account, money she worked for, contributed to, and trusted would be used fairly, Janelle says she began noticing something she could no longer ignore. Funds were disappearing. Not small amounts. Not everyday expenses. Significant sums. Gone, without explanation. At first, she did what she had always done, trusted the system. Trusted the family. Trusted Cody. Because that's how it had always worked. Or at least, that's how it was supposed to work. One family. One vision. Shared resources. Equal sacrifice. But somewhere along the way, that vision began to unravel. And the more Janelle looked, the less sense things made. Because while she was being told she was in charge, the reality behind the scenes told a very different story. Decisions were being made without her. Money was being moved without her approval. And explanations? They were either vague or completely non-existent. Meanwhile, another narrative was quietly being reinforced. That Janelle was the one calling the shots. That she was responsible. That if anything didn't add up, it must be on her. And that's where things took a serious turn. Because once Janelle realized what was happening, she stopped staying silent. She stopped brushing things off. And most importantly, she stopped trusting the story she had been fed for years. Now, with legal support behind her, she's demanding something the family has never truly faced before, a full financial audit. Not assumptions. Not excuses. Not emotional explanations. Facts. Paper trails. Proof. And suddenly, the pressure isn't just on Cody anymore. All eyes are shifting toward Robyn, the one wife who, until now, seemed untouched by the financial chaos surrounding the rest of the family. The one who always claimed she wasn't involved. The one who stayed quiet while others questioned. But now that the numbers are being called into question, that silence is starting to feel different. Because if Janelle didn't control the money, and Mary didn't know where it was going, then someone did. And as this audit begins to unfold, one thing is becoming painfully clear. This isn't just a misunderstanding. This is the beginning of a financial reckoning that could change everything. What started as quiet confusion is now turning into something far more serious, because the deeper Janelle looks, the more the entire system begins to fall apart. For years, she believed in the structure, the shared account, the idea that every dollar coming in was meant to support everyone equally. It wasn't just money, it was trust. It was commitment. It was the foundation of their plural marriage. But now, that foundation is starting to look like an illusion. Because according to Janelle, she wasn't the one making financial decisions, she was just recording them. Logging transactions. Sending numbers to the CPA. That's it. No authority. No approval power. No control. And yet, for years, the narrative stayed the same. That she was the one in charge. That contradiction alone raises a dangerous question. If Janelle wasn't controlling the money, then who was? The answer, according to her, points directly at Cody. She says he was the one moving money, making decisions, pulling funds out without explanation. And the most unsettling part? No one questioned him. At least, not out loud. Because in a family built on hierarchy, loyalty, and trust, Questioning the system meant risking everything. And for a long time, Janelle chose peace over confrontation. But peace came at a cost. Because slowly, quietly, things began to change. The open conversations about money disappeared. The shared decision-making faded. And in its place came silence. Then secrecy. Then something even worse, exclusion. Janelle, the woman who once helped manage the family's financial structure, found herself locked out of it, watching from the outside as decisions were made behind closed doors. And still, she stayed quiet. Until she couldn't anymore. Because while she was trying to make sense of missing funds, something else became impossible to ignore: the lifestyle differences. While some wives were downsizing, cutting back, and struggling to maintain stability, one household didn't seem to feel the pressure at all. Robyn's. Her home remained comfortable, stable, untouched by the financial strain that everyone else was clearly feeling. And that's when fans, and now Janelle, started connecting the dots. Because if the family was under financial pressure, why did it only seem to affect certain people? Why were some sacrificing, while others appeared secure? And more importantly, where was the money actually going? Janelle says she doesn't know. Mary says she doesn't know. Which leaves one possibility that's becoming harder and harder to ignore: someone did know. And as this tension builds, the emotional cracks are turning into something far more explosive. Because this isn't just about money anymore. It's about power. It's about control. And it's about a system that may have never been as equal as it claimed to be. Now, with legal action on the table and a full audit looming, the truth isn't something that can be avoided anymore. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every decision, it all has to be accounted for. And if even one inconsistency is found, just one moment where money was used unfairly or without transparency, everything could unravel. Fast. Because what Janelle is uncovering isn't just financial mismanagement. It could be proof that the entire system was built to benefit one side, while the others were left in the dark. And if that's true, then this isn't just a family dispute anymore. It's something much bigger. By now, it's no longer just suspicion. It's a full-blown unraveling. And the deeper this situation goes, the more it's becoming clear that what once looked like a united family was actually built on cracks no one wanted to acknowledge. Because for Janelle, this didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one big moment. It was a slow realization, piece by piece. First, it was the little things, decisions being made without discussion. Then came the financial gaps, numbers that didn't quite add up. Withdrawals that no one could explain. And eventually, silence. A wall of silence so thick, even she couldn't get answers anymore. This is the same woman who once believed in the system more than anyone. The one who stayed logical when emotions ran high. The one who trusted that everything would balance out in the end. But now, that trust is gone. Because what she's seeing in hindsight is something far more unsettling. A pattern. A system where money could be moved freely, but only by certain people. A structure where responsibility was shared, but control was not. And at the center of it all, Cody. According to Janelle, he didn't just influence the finances, he dominated them. Taking out funds, making decisions, and never fully explaining where anything was going. And when questions were raised, they were dismissed, deflected, or worse, redirected back at her. That narrative, that she was the one in charge, now feels less like a misunderstanding and more like a calculated deflection. Because if everyone believed Janelle controlled the money, then no one would look any deeper. But now they are. And what they're finding is raising even more questions. Because if Janelle didn't know where the money was going, and Mary didn't know either, then who was aware of the full picture? That's where things get uncomfortable. Because all signs are starting to point toward Robyn. For years, she remained on the sidelines of financial discussions. Quiet, emotional, detached from the tension that often surrounded money conversations. She rarely challenged Cody, rarely questioned decisions, and almost never inserted herself into financial conflicts. At the time, it made her look like the peacemaker. But now, that same silence is being viewed very differently. Because staying out of it can also mean staying protected from it. And as the family struggled, emotionally and financially, Robyn's household appeared to remain steady, stable, even thriving. And that contrast is becoming impossible to ignore. Because this isn't just about perception anymore, it's about patterns. Patterns that suggest money may not have been distributed as equally as everyone believed. Patterns that hint at favoritism. And patterns that, if proven, could completely destroy the narrative that's been maintained for years. But here's where it gets even more intense. Janelle isn't just questioning what happened. She's preparing to prove it. With a lawyer now involved, this situation has officially crossed a line from family conflict into potential legal exposure. Because once financial records are pulled, once transactions are analyzed, once the truth is laid out in black and white, there's no more hiding behind emotions or vague explanations. It becomes fact. And facts don't bend. They don't soften. And they definitely don't protect anyone. So now, the real question isn't just what happened to the money. It's who benefited from it. And as this investigation moves forward, one thing is becoming very clear. The answers aren't going to stay buried much longer. At this point, the situation isn't just tense, it's explosive. Because what's unfolding now isn't just about missing money, it's about a narrative that may have been carefully controlled for years. And the moment Janelle decided to challenge that narrative, everything changed. Because for the first time, she's not just questioning what happened, she's calling it out directly. That whole idea that she ran the finances? She's shutting it down completely. According to Janelle, her role was never about control, it was about compliance. She tracked numbers, documented transactions, and passed information along. That's it. No authority. No decision-making power. Just responsibility, without control. And that distinction? It changes everything. Because if she didn't have the power people thought she did, then the responsibility being placed on her shoulders starts to look a lot like blame shifting. And that brings us right back to Cody. Because while Janelle was logging transactions, Cody was allegedly the one making the calls, moving money, deciding where it went, and doing it without fully informing the women whose incomes were feeding that shared account. And now that this is coming to light, his long-standing explanation that everything was fair, that everyone had access, is starting to fall apart. Because access doesn't mean awareness. And it definitely doesn't mean control. Meanwhile, the pressure is building in another direction, toward Robyn. For years, she stayed removed from financial conflict. She didn't argue about budgets. She didn't push back on spending. And she rarely inserted herself into money discussions at all. At the time, it made her seem uninvolved, disconnected, maybe even innocent. But now, that same distance is being re-examined. Because when the system starts to crack, the people who appeared untouched by it suddenly become the biggest question marks. And that's exactly what's happening now. Because while Janelle is saying she didn't control the money, and Mary is saying she didn't know where it was going, Robyn's position becomes harder to define. Was she truly unaware? Or was she simply unaffected? Because there's a difference. And that difference is what this entire situation is starting to revolve around. Fans have already begun pointing it out, the lifestyle gap, the stability. The fact that while other households were adjusting, downsizing, and struggling to stay afloat, Robyn's world seemed unchanged, comfortable, consistent. And now that the financial structure is under scrutiny, those observations are no longer just speculation, they're part of a much bigger question. Because if resources were limited, if money was tight, then how did one household manage to avoid the impact? That's the question no one has clearly answered. Not Cody, not the accountant, and definitely not Robyn. Instead, what we're getting are emotional responses, not factual ones. Tears instead of transparency. Deflection instead of detail. And that might have worked before, but it won't work now. Because once lawyers get involved, emotions don't matter. Numbers do. Paper trails do. Proof does. And if that proof reveals even a single instance where money was used unfairly or directed in a way that benefited one household over the others, this entire situation could escalate fast. We're talking about more than just hurt feelings now. We're talking about accountability. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about who said what. It's about who knew what, who decided what, and who benefited from it. And as Janelle continues pushing forward, one thing is becoming undeniable. The truth isn't just coming out. It's being forced out. Now here's where everything takes an even sharper turn, because this isn't just about money sitting in a bank account anymore. It's about something much bigger, something that has been tying this entire family together for years. Coyote Pass. What was once supposed to be the Browns' ultimate dream, a fresh start, a shared future, a physical symbol of unity, is now turning into the very thing tearing them apart. Because behind all the promises, behind the vision of building homes side by side, there's one major problem. No one seems to fully know who owns what. And that confusion? It's dangerous. Janelle says she paid for her portion of the land using money from the shared family account. Mary says the same thing. Both of them believed fully that they had equal stakes in that property, equal investment, equal ownership, equal future. But now that the details are being questioned, that belief is starting to crumble. Because Cody is telling a completely different story. He claims that a significant portion of at least one of the lots was paid for by him personally, up to 90% or more, and that the rest came from shared funds. And if that's true, it raises a massive question. Why wasn't any of this clearly documented from the beginning? Why weren't all the wives equally listed on the deeds? Why did everything rely so heavily on trust instead of legal clarity? Because now, that lack of structure is coming back to haunt them. Hard. Janelle herself has admitted it. Looking back, she regrets not pushing for legal protection. Not insisting that every name be on every deed. Not questioning things when she had the chance. At the time, she believed in the family. She believed it would all work out. But now, that belief feels like a mistake. Because without contracts, without clear documentation, everything turns into a gray area. And gray areas lead to conflict. Legal conflict. Emotional conflict. And right now, both are happening at the same time. Because Coyote Pass isn't just land anymore, it's leverage. It's the one asset still connecting Janelle, Mary, Cody, and Robyn. And no one is walking away from it quietly. Especially not now. Because if Janelle's financial audit uncovers irregularities, if it shows that shared funds were used unfairly or without transparency, it could directly impact how that land is divided. Who gets what? Who deserves what? And who may have taken more than their fair share? And suddenly, this isn't just about the past, it's about the future. Because that land? It might be the only thing left worth fighting over. And now, even Mary, the one who stayed loyal the longest, the one who defended the system when others walked away, is starting to question everything. She's no longer staying silent. She's no longer trusting the process. And most importantly, she's no longer standing on the sidelines. Because once she realized that she might not even have a clear claim to something she financially contributed to, everything shifted. Now, it's not just Janelle pushing back. It's Janelle and Mary. Two voices, two perspectives, and potentially two legal battles. Which means the pressure on Cody and especially Robyn is doubling. Because the more people start asking questions, the harder it becomes to control the narrative. And if there's one thing this family relied on for years, it was control. Control of the story. Control of the image. Control of the truth. But now, that control is slipping. And as it does, one thing is becoming crystal clear: Coyote Pass was never just a dream. It was a risk. And now, that risk is turning into a full-blown battlefield. At this point, the cracks are no longer subtle, they're wide open. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more intense, another shift happens. Because now, it's not just Janelle raising concerns. Mary is stepping in. And that changes everything. For years, Mary was seen as the most loyal. The one who stayed when others pulled away. The one who defended Cody and gave Robyn the benefit of the doubt, even when things didn't feel right. She held the line, even when it cost her emotionally. But something has changed. And it didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, like everything else in this family. A comment here, a decision there. Moments where she felt overlooked, unheard, pushed aside. Until eventually, Those moments turned into a realization she could no longer ignore. She may have been giving everything, while receiving far less in return. And the breaking point? It wasn't just emotional. It was financial. Because when Mary started questioning what she was actually entitled to, especially when it came to Coyote Pass, she didn't get clarity. She got resistance. At one point, she was reportedly told that her share of the land might not be equal, because she only had one child. Let that sink in. After years of contribution, loyalty, and sacrifice, her worth was being measured by numbers that had nothing to do with money. And for Mary, that was it. That was the moment everything shifted. Because this wasn't just about land anymore. It was about dignity, respect, and finally realizing that the system she trusted may have never truly valued her equally. But here's where things get even more complicated. It wasn't just Cody's stance that hurt. It was Robyn's silence. For years, Mary believed they had a bond. A real connection. She stood by Robyn when others didn't. Defended her. Supported her. But when things started falling apart, that support didn't seem to come back. No clear defense. No strong stance. Just distance. And that silence? It spoke louder than anything else. Because when everything was on the line, money, property, trust, Robyn didn't step in to clarify anything. She didn't correct the narrative. She didn't provide answers. And for Mary, that raised a painful question: was that relationship ever real, or just convenient? Now, instead of waiting for answers, Mary is taking action. She's lawyering up. And just like Janelle, she's preparing to fight for what she believes is hers. Which means this situation is no longer one-sided. It's not just one woman asking questions. It's two women, both demanding accountability, both challenging the same system, and both potentially bringing legal pressure that could expose everything. Because if both of them were misled, if both of them were excluded from real decision-making, then this isn't just miscommunication. It's a pattern that could point to something much deeper than anyone initially thought. And suddenly, Robyn's position becomes even more critical. Because staying quiet when one person is questioning things? That might go unnoticed. But staying silent when two people are pushing back? That starts to look intentional. And the more this unfolds, the harder it becomes to ignore one uncomfortable possibility: that while others were questioning, sacrificing, and struggling, someone else may have been benefiting, whether directly or indirectly. And now, with both Janelle and Mary stepping forward, the pressure isn't just building. It's closing in. Fast. Because when two voices align against the same system, that system doesn't just shake. It starts to collapse. Now what we're witnessing isn't just a breakdown behind the scenes, it's happening right in front of everyone. On camera. In interviews. In confessionals. And fans are calling it exactly what it looks like. A full-blown confessional war. Because one by one, each member of the family is stepping in front of the camera, not to reflect, but to defend themselves, shift blame, and reshape the story before it's too late. And the contrast between them? It couldn't be more obvious. Janelle, calm, direct, and done holding back. Mary, emotional, but firm, no longer willing to be ignored. Cody, defensive, dismissive, and sticking to the same explanation. And Robyn? Soft-spoken, tearful, careful with every word. But here's the problem. Emotion doesn't answer questions. And right now, there are a lot of questions. Cody, for his part, continues to repeat the same narrative. That everything was fair. That everyone had access to the money. That this is all just one big misunderstanding. At one point, he even shrugs it off, saying he's not trying to rip anyone off. But that response? It's not landing the way he thinks it is. Because the issue isn't intention anymore. It's transparency. It's accountability. And most importantly, it's proof. Because while he keeps insisting everything was handled fairly, there's still one thing missing: a clear explanation of where the money actually went. No detailed breakdown. No real answers. Just repetition. And that repetition is starting to sound less like truth and more like deflection. Meanwhile, Robyn is taking a completely different approach. Instead of focusing on numbers, she leans into emotion. She talks about loyalty. about wanting to keep the family together, about always having Mary's back. But when it comes to specifics, the conversation shifts. The answers become vague. And the details? They disappear completely. And that's becoming a problem. Because in a situation like this, emotional statements don't hold up, especially if legal action is involved. Facts do. Records do. And right now, those are exactly the things people are asking for. Because here's the reality. If Robyn truly had no involvement, no awareness, no benefit from any financial imbalance, then showing that should be simple, clear, straightforward. But instead, what people are seeing is hesitation, avoidance, and silence where clarity should be. And that silence? It's getting louder by the day. Meanwhile, Janelle and Mary are no longer playing defense. They're going on record, calling things out directly. Janelle even made one statement that completely shattered Cody's version of events. She said if she truly had control over the money, they would have paid off the land and built on it already. That one line? It hit hard. Because it didn't just challenge the narrative, it exposed it. And Mary isn't far behind. She's no longer accepting being pushed aside, financially or emotionally. She wants answers. She wants clarity. And she's prepared to fight for it. Which means what we're watching now isn't just a disagreement. It's a race. A race to define the truth before the facts come out. Because once the audit is complete, once the records are revealed, once everything is laid out in black and white, there won't be any room left for interpretation. Someone's version of the story is going to collapse. Completely. And the only question left is who's been telling the truth? And who's been controlling it? Now we're entering the most critical phase of this entire situation because it's no longer about opinions, emotions, or even public perception. It's about evidence. Because behind the scenes, Janelle's legal team isn't just asking questions. They're digging deep. We're talking bank records, transaction histories, CPA reports, every single detail that can trace where money came from and where it actually went. And at the center of it all is one simple but explosive question: where did the money go? But what makes this even more serious is what that answer could lead to. Because if those records show a pattern, if they reveal that funds were consistently being directed in a certain way, benefiting certain people while others were left out, this stops being a family disagreement and starts looking like something legal, something serious. Because it's not just about money being spent. It's about how it was spent, who approved it, who knew about it, and who benefited from it. According to sources close to the situation, Janelle's team is pushing for complete transparency. No gaps, no missing pages, no vague summaries. Everything. And that level of detail? It can get uncomfortable fast. Especially for Cody, who's been accused of moving money without clear communication. But also for Robyn. Because even if she wasn't directly handling the finances, if her household benefited from decisions made using shared funds, that connection matters. A lot. Because in legal terms, benefiting from questionable financial activity, even indirectly, can still raise serious concerns. And that's where things start to shift from messy to risky. Because now, it's not just about proving what happened. It's about proving whether anyone was misled, whether information was withheld, whether decisions were made without full consent from the people whose money was being used. And if that's the case, this could open the door to something much bigger. Compensation claims, asset disputes, even civil action. And here's where it gets even more intense. Mary isn't sitting back and watching this unfold. She's preparing her own legal approach, which means this could become a two-front situation. Two separate challenges, two sets of claims, all focused on the same core issue: the handling of the family's finances and the division of shared assets, including Coyote Pass. Because if both Janelle and Mary can show that they were excluded, misinformed, or treated unfairly, that strengthens their position significantly and puts even more pressure on Cody and, by extension, Robyn. But Cody is still holding on to one key argument: that Janelle, as the bookkeeper, should have known everything. That she had visibility. That she had access. But Janelle is pushing back hard on that. She's making a very clear distinction: she had a role, but she didn't have power. She recorded what happened. She didn't decide it. And that difference? It could be the most important detail in this entire situation. Because if it's proven that she was kept in the dark, then the responsibility shifts. And the narrative changes completely. From shared confusion to possible misuse of trust. And if, during that same time, one household appeared to thrive while others struggled, that contrast won't be ignored. Not by fans. Not by lawyers. And definitely not by anyone looking at the facts. Because at the end of the day, numbers don't lie. Records don't get emotional. And paper trails don't disappear. They tell a story. And right now, that story is getting closer to being fully exposed. Now here's the part where everything comes full circle, because what started as quiet doubts has now turned into something undeniable. This isn't just about money anymore. It's about trust and how completely it may have been broken. For years, Janelle believed in the system. She believed in the idea that no matter how complicated things got, the family would take care of each other. That everything would balance out in the end. But now, looking back with clarity, she's realizing something that's hard to accept. That system may have never been built for fairness in the first place. Because when she really examines it, all the signs were there. She was doing the work, tracking the numbers, contributing consistently, while someone else was making the decisions. And someone else may have been benefiting the most. That realization? It changes everything. Because it means what she lost wasn't just financial. It was emotional. It was psychological. It was the belief that they were all in this together. And now that belief is gone. Replaced by something much stronger, determination. Because Janelle isn't backing down anymore. She's not staying quiet. And she's definitely not accepting vague answers. She wants clarity. She wants accountability. And most importantly, she wants the truth. And she's willing to go as far as she needs to get it. Meanwhile, the spotlight on Robyn is growing brighter than ever. Because the longer she avoids giving clear, factual answers, the more her silence starts to feel intentional. And fans are noticing. They're asking the same questions over and over again. Why did her household always seem stable? Why didn't the financial strain affect her the same way it affected the others? And most importantly, what did she know? Because at this stage, I didn't know isn't going to be enough. Not if the numbers tell a different story. Not if the audit reveals patterns that can't be ignored. Because if it turns out that money was consistently flowing in a way that favored her household, whether she directly controlled it or not, she's going to have to explain that. Clearly. Directly. And without emotion hiding the facts. Because this situation is moving beyond perception. It's moving toward accountability. Real accountability. The kind that doesn't rely on storytelling, but on evidence. And now, with Mary also stepping forward, the pressure is doubling. Because this is no longer one person questioning the system. It's two people, two voices, two perspectives that are starting to align in a way that's impossible to ignore. And when that happens, it creates momentum. Momentum that's hard to stop. Because now, it's not just about uncovering what went wrong. It's about exposing what may have been hidden all along. And here's the most uncomfortable part of all. If the audit confirms even a fraction of what's being suspected, then this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't just poor communication. It may have been a system where one side quietly gained, while the others slowly lost. And if that truth comes out, the consequences won't just be emotional. They could be legal. And once things reach that level, there's no going back. And now we arrive at the climax of this saga, the point where everything is on the line. The finances, the land, the trust, the very foundation of what the Browns once called family. Because after years of quiet tension, missing money, and vague excuses, the truth is finally catching up. Janelle's audit is in motion. Mary's legal strategy is underway. And all eyes are on Robyn, whose quiet, soft-spoken approach is no longer enough to shield her from scrutiny. For years, she stayed on the sidelines. She remained teary-eyed, diplomatic, careful with her words, letting Cody handle the narrative while the rest of the family questioned and struggled. But the silence that once protected her now makes her look complicit. Fans are asking the questions they've been whispering for years. Why did her household always seem untouched while others tightened their belts? What did she know, and when did she know it? Because facts matter more than emotions now. And the audit will reveal those facts. It isn't just about missing money, it's about patterns. Patterns that may show favoritism, misused funds, or quiet benefits flowing directly to Robyn's home. And if the audit confirms even a fraction of that, suddenly, what looked like a personal family conflict becomes a potential legal disaster. This isn't reality TV drama anymore. It's a test of accountability, a reckoning for choices made years ago, and proof that trust, once broken, has real consequences. And at the center of it all is Coyote Pass. That sprawling Arizona property, once a dream of unity, has turned into the final battlefield. The land that was supposed to tie the Browns together is now leverage, a point of contention that mirrors the chaos of their finances. Who owns what? Who paid for which lot? Who benefited the most? Every unanswered question, every vague statement, every silent moment now matters. Janelle has repeatedly stated if she truly had control of the finances, they would have built homes and paid off land years ago. That line alone dismantles the narrative Cody spent years constructing, that the money was always managed fairly and transparently. Mary's involvement adds even more pressure. Her realization that she may have been misled, manipulated, or excluded is pushing her to demand answers and legal action if necessary. And the dynamic between Robyn and Mary? No longer clear-cut. The trust that once seemed unshakable is being tested. Mary is questioning loyalties, reviewing past support, and preparing to challenge the system herself. So what does this mean for Robyn and Cody? It means the walls are closing in. The narrative they controlled for years is unraveling, piece by piece. Every unaccounted transaction, every unexplained withdrawal, every silent decision can, and likely will, be scrutinized. The once celebrated plural marriage dream has turned into a battlefield of broken trust, financial questions, and legal consequences. And the key takeaway? For years, Janelle, Mary, and Mary operated within a system they believed was fair. They trusted. They contributed. They played by the rules. Now, those rules are being challenged, and the consequences could be enormous. So, the ultimate question remains, will justice be served? Will transparency finally reveal the truth? Or will Robyn and Cody manage to navigate through the storm? One thing is certain, nothing will ever look the same again. The Brown family, their finances, their land, and their relationships, everything is on the line. And for the fans watching every confession, every tear, every statement, it's a story that proves one thing: trust is fragile, and the truth always finds its way out. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let us know, do you think Janelle, Mary, and Mary will get the justice they deserve? And don't forget to like and subscribe, because this saga isn't over, and the next chapter promises even more shocking revelations.